Oscar, otherwise known as Psycadillo, and today I'm going to be breaking down my Kassandra from Assassin's Creed Odyssey. This isn't actually the first breakdown video I've done. I've done one for Eivor from Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and my Wonder Woman. So if you're keen on this kind of thing, you like cosplay in general, hit subscribe and just, enjoy the video. So, fun fact about this cosplay, back in 2018 I was actually commissioned by Ubisoft and Megarom Interactive to put together Kassandra in order to promote her later on in the year for Assassin's Creed Odyssey's release. This cosplay has a little special part in my heart because it is not only the first cosplay I've done for Ubisoft, but this was actually the second armor build I ever put together. It took so much, it was a huge learning curve and it just took so much blood, sweat and tears to do, but to this day it remains one of my most favorite pieces in my cosplay cupboard. The character came about at a time in my life where I really needed her, and I remember seeing the release and the concept art for Odyssey back at E3, and something just drew me to Kassandra. It's, I think, partially because I think I look kind of like her, being Mediterranean and all, but the cosplay itself is so comfortable to wear. In South Africa, and I'm sure other places, but here it gets super, super hot during summers, and that's when all our conventions are. And Kassandra is one of the most comfy cosplays to wear at conventions. Not only do I have the freedom of running around and bending and jumping, obviously to a degree, she does have a tunic underneath, but she's very comfortable. I have movement in my legs that I don't have with my Wonder Woman, and yeah, she's just pretty badass to wear. So I consider Kassandra to be one of my more mixed medium cosplays. Usually I prefer to stick to foam, and I incorporate like little bits of sewing here and there, but for Kassandra there were so many different materials that I needed to make her out of. So beginning with the shawl, this is actually the perfect example of it being mixed medium because this is made out of a linen, and I remember Kassandra has a very specific pattern that kind of goes on the shawl with tasseling at the end, and I wanted to kind of take the game design and translate it into something that I preferred a little bit more. So I found this tassel that worked perfectly. It has enough detailing to almost seem like gaudy, and I feel like it complements it well. This shawl was extremely difficult to make, I'm not gonna lie, because you can't see it now, but when it's laid out flat, there's such a weird shape that it has to bend into in order to get, this sits on the shoulder, this sits and it kind of covers. It was super, super difficult to figure out, but in the end, with a bit of brain power from some other cosplayers, we sat and we figured it out. The pin here is made completely out of foam. I think there's some crazy amount of layers on that. This pin is actually not included in Kassandra's actual design. This is just something I was given by Ubisoft for the work I did with them, so I figured since it was Odyssey related and since it kind of fits with the entire costume, I figured I would just display it a little bit there. The rest, most of the costume is made out of foam. Now, foam is what I consider to be my strongest point in cosplay, and I really had a lot of fun with this because this was the first time that I tried to use leather as an element in my foam work. Because this was my second foam build that I'd done, it took a lot of guessing work and a lot of practice and a lot of figuring things out. The one thing I really liked about Kassandra and her breastplate was the fact that she was a mercenary and she was a Spartan. So she had a really rugged, roughed up look. And I might have gone slightly crazy with the weathering on this, but this was the first set of weathering I ever did on cosplay. And while most people use, and I usually use the soldering iron method on this, I actually took a can opener and I ripped the hell off of this breastplate, but you know what, in the end it actually does give a pretty cool effect, and it's one of the times I haven't regretted going absolutely crazy with the weathering because it kind of works with the character. So we have some can opener destruction on the breastplate. All the other details were burnt in with the soldering iron. I don't think you can see it properly, but when this is on my body, the entire breastplate is actually contoured to kind of the muscles that you would find in the abdomen, and just kind of contoured to my body. It's a bit difficult to show on this mannequin because I'm a very tiny person, and this mannequin is, although it is tiny, I am smaller. So I have to point out that Kassandra doesn't actually have Velcro on her breastplate. This just can't cover, it's too small for the mannequin. But moving on to that section, if you just ignore the Velcro, Kassandra has these straps that go over the top. She has a lot of detail work in this, and as someone who was new to foam, I didn't know how to approach this. This was actually before people started cottoning onto foamclay. I had used a little lightweight foam clay as a kid that I used to make toys out of. So I figured, cool, if I can't carve this out of foam, what if I made it out of foam clay? And this is before people started doing it normally, so I'm quite chuffed with myself. But she has a lot of these like kind of gargoyle-y faces that sit on here. So once again, mixed medium, foam clay. I think this was a keyring that I used. You can always upcycle stuff, just a tip. And then I used foam once again, went in with, I think I used a blade to score the details in and open it up with a heat gun. Can open a damage on it. And for all of the leather parts of this that aren't the breastplate, I decided I would use actual faux leather for it, just because I figured it would be easier, and it kind of wasn't. It killed my mom's sewing machine to make. But this section is made out of red leather. Everything is actually contact glued together. And for all the connections on the cosplay, I use like a kind of leather cord that I managed to find. I felt like using that over string or anything else kind of gave it a more organic look, and that's exactly what I wanted. So these are actually completely functional. They flap up and down, and they're actually secured, firstly with Velcro, but they're secured to the bottom section here, which is filled with detail, and they actually tie in place. So when I put on Kassandra, it takes me a little bit of time to get into it, but I think the effect that you can actually tell it's being held together like this is very much worth it. The costume is filled with all of these tiny little studs and rivets. Those were very difficult to make. I actually used teeny tiny little googly eyes, and the costume's covered in them. Absolutely covered. Fun fact, if I jump in this cosplay, you'll hear me. You'll hear me from so far away. The hardest part of this cosplay is actually the belt system that Kassandra has rigged up everywhere. There are so many different conjoining pieces that are held together. Everything is tied together once again. I don't know if you can notice it on camera, but there are so many little details that are connected on this thing, and it was a nightmare to figure out how long everything should be and how everything connects. The belt system is extremely complex, and I wanted to get it as close to the reference material as possible. And so like I ended up with a ton of different pieces that connect to one another, even at the back there. Even though you wouldn't be able to see it, I put thought into it. And on that belt sits the sword sheath, and within the sword. Sword was actually 3D printed by my friends for my birthday, so shout out to them. This is my first 3D printed prop. This was my first 3D printed prop, and it's a little bit fragile. I'm sure you'll see once I eventually get it out, if it doesn't break as I take it out. But it's actually broken. It wobbles a little bit. I'm getting flashbacks to my Wonder Woman video, actually. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check it out. But I snapped this while sitting on a rock trying to do a photo shoot, so I would recommend being more careful with props, especially if they are made of plastic. These are pretty self-explanatory. They're almost exactly the same as what I did there, but the tunic that goes under Kassandra was quite interesting. Everything is raw linen, which was a little bit pricey to use and make, and it's all raw edges as well. I went and distressed everything by hand myself, and I tried to get it as accurate as possible, and I'm quite happy with the results, to be quite honest. Moving on to the braces. This bracer has almost as much detail as you'd see about here, and all of that was done with foam clay, with a base of 5mm foam, EVA foam. This was just made out of 5mm and 2mm EVA foam, and both of them were all heat formed and textured myself. These were very difficult to make because, I don't know if you can tell, but they're extremely sticky outy, for lack of a better term or phrase. But that was all done by layering up foam on top of each other, and heat forming it until I was happy. So these are probably one of my favorite parts of this cosplay, and yeah, they've been velcroed onto little wraps that go around her arms just for ease of access and getting dressed. Moving on to the leg pieces, I only actually have one of them with me because I am filming at my fiance's house and I straight up forgot the other one at home. But all of this is made out of 5mm EVA foam, and once again detailed with foam clay. So this isn't actually the only Kassandra cosplay that I've done. I'm actually in the process of making Kassandra's Spartan Warrior. This is still a work in progress. I'm gonna have a cosplay breakdown on this once I'm done, but I am super excited about it. and I can't wait to show you guys what I'm up to. But yeah, just had to bring it out there because my girl Cass deserves far more love than she gets. So thanks for joining me on this mildly chaotic breakdown. I had a lot of fun with this cosplay, and it's something that I hold dear to my heart, even though I cannot remember how I made half of it. So if you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe, and if you haven't checked out my other cosplay breakdowns, I have them in my playlist and you should definitely check them out. So thank you so much for joining me, and see you at the next video.